weeks now, my wife, who looks after her mom, she's a widow, she went down one morning to the house and found that she'd fallen in the night on the stairs. She couldn't get up, so called an ambulance, went into hospital, and they were looking after her there. Not the Sunday just gone, the previous Sunday. The hospital called us in, me and my wife, and said, we need to talk to you about the discharge. That's what we were thinking it was. That's what they told us. And then sort of preparations for afterwards. Anyway, the surgeon, the specialist came in and he said, we've done a scan. She's got cancer. She's dying. He didn't really make it that clear. So I had to say, is the bottom line that she's terminal? And he said, yes, it is. And so going in from what we thought was just plans for a routine discharge suddenly escalated very quickly to the opposite end of the spectrum. And life can be like that sometimes. We can have news that can change the whole direction of where we're going, sometimes in the positive, sometimes sadly in the negative. And it certainly has been something that we've got used to, as it were, if I could use that term, as a family, because I can remember when my dad called me one day, this was some years ago, and said, I need to speak to you. He'd just gone into hospital, and the bottom line was he had pancreatic cancer, which eventually took his life. The same with my father-in-law, and he died of cancer. We were there with him, me, my wife, and my mother-in-law at that time. And you do think about death. You have to, because it's part of what we all have to go through eventually. And I can remember when I was young and my 4 grandparents were alive, then one by one they passed away. I remember my nan in particular, my mum's mom, and I was very close to her. I was 15 years old, and that was the first time I think that I'd really encountered bereavement in the way that it hit deep inside. And I still think of my nan now, all these years later, with fond memories, because that's what you do. You move on and healing comes in and you look back on the good times, same as my dad as well. I do the same thing there. And then your parents, they start to depart this life. And you think to yourself, not morbid, I'm next. I'm the one that'll be getting that news at some point in the future. I remember when my dad was diagnosed, he was terminal, and eventually that's what took his life. I spoke with him and I said, Dad, you need to make your peace with God. And he said, I've already done that. So he was aware enough of things that we'd talked about in the past. He did that. Make your peace with your Maker before you depart this earth. There's a character in the Bible called Job, and Job lost everything. And in the story that we read, and I'm keeping it short and condensing it here, but in the story that we read, he refused to blame God. Because people do, don't they? People say it's God's fault when something happens to them. Even though they never bother with him for the rest of their lives, it's God's fault. He refused to blame anyone. He took a very stoical and philosophical approach. That was like my dad. My dad was an inspiration during the time that he was living out his final few months on this earth. Because he said to me one day, it was somebody else, it was the day he was diagnosed, he spoke to me. He said, it was somebody else's turn yesterday. It's my turn today. It'll be another person's tomorrow. You fight things and you battle, but ultimately we all must depart this earth. Make your peace with God. And then, while we're on this earth now, make the most of it. Enjoy life, because each second, each day, each week, month and year that goes by, we never know when our time will come. But as for this side of things, as it were, dealing with our loved ones and the situations that they go through, we have to be strong. In life, you either sink or swim. That's the reality. and the situation with my mother-in-law, obviously going through a difficult time herself now, physically and emotionally. And we don't know how long she has to live. We can't visit her at the moment because of the COVID thing, so all that's there as well. But for us, we have to be strong. We have to carry on. We have to push on and live life. I've said to my wife many times over the years, if anything happens to me, and I'm not being morbid again, but you do talk about these things. I said, if anything happens to me, of course you'll grieve. And of course you will go through a period of bereavement. That's natural. We've been married more than 30 years and we've been together all of that time. We've been soulmates from the time that we met. But one day, unless we both depart at the same time, but one day one of us will be on our own. And I've said to my wife, grieve, go through the period of bereavement and then move on with your life. I don't want you spending the rest of your days just looking back, because we have to allow time to come in and be a healer. So for me personally, what we're going through at the moment, I'm not making a big fuss about it. It happened 10 days or so ago now. We had the news. I've carried on living life. I've gone to work. I'm not after any time off or any favours or anything like that. In fact, I haven't told anyone at work. This is the first time that I've told people at church, because that's where my mother-in-law was as well. She went to church with us there, but I haven't gone beyond that. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not looking for people to feel sorry for us, if that makes sense, because you have to be strong and you have to push on with life. You have to deal with these things. You can't bury them under the carpet. It's no good thinking that things aren't happening, because they are. But you have to be strong. You have to push on. Make your peace with God. That's important. One day we will all stand before him in judgment. Make your peace with God. But as far as the practicalities of life are concerned, we do have to push on. I think the two words that came out for me when I look back over my dad's situation and the way that he handled it personally were stoical and philosophical. He battled on, and whatever he was going through physically, he refused to allow it to affect him. Obviously, in the end, he had terminal cancer, and that's what took his life. It's what took my father-in-law's life. It's what will take my mother-in-law's life. It is something that we have to live with in modern society. But apart from that, and again, not wanting to get into the darker side of life and all the morbid thoughts that can come with that, is that we do stay strong. We do live above the circumstances. How are you? Well, I'm okay under the circumstances. Don't live under the circumstances. Live above them. Carry on. Make the most of life. I'm at this moment in time. Who knows what tomorrow brings? Who knows what next week or next month or next year brings? But I'm healthy. I'm strong. I've got no issues. I'm doing quite well for my age, actually. But I do know that one day that will come to an end. I'm not going to live forever. All the money in the world, all the wealth, the fame, the fortune, none of it will extend our life by 1 second. We come into the world with nothing and we depart it in the same manner as well. These are times when it's good to reflect, because you could be searching for money, you could be searching for possessions, longing for those things that you think will bring you happiness. And the reality is they won't. Not saying there's anything wrong with possessions. In fact, for me, the philosophy is quite clear. There's nothing wrong with having things. It's when things have us that the problems start. But we do need to make the most of life. We do need to push on. We do need to squeeze what we can out of every day. Stay safe, especially in these difficult times in which we live. But above all, take that philosophical and stoical approach to life.